Okay, so we're recording. Wonderful. We'll go back to sharing. Okay, so we look at 4 big familiar online businesses, which are, I'm going to relocate some stuff here. Okay, doesn't want to move. Come on, you. No, not working. All right, we'll just write that later. So in the lecture, we look at 4 big familiar online businesses: Facebook, Amazon, Google, and YouTube. Okay, and the focus of this, they store and process different kinds of data. And they have different systems. Okay, for example, Facebook's big data load is images, right? They have untold exabytes. Exabytes are very large amounts of data, probably at least 10, maybe 20 or even more exabytes of photo data. They get a lot. Google, right? Google stores lots and lots of web pages. Amazon, they're primarily a retail operation, so they have to deal with lots of simultaneous transactions. YouTube, streaming videos, which is a lot like what Facebook does, because videos are not that different from just stacks of images. So they have different kinds of data, they handle it differently, and that's basically what the course is about, okay? All right. So how does this manifest as far as grades and evaluations and such? Well, on the lecture side has 4 exams, 1 for each module. Okay, so there'll be a module on Facebook, module on Google, and so on. At the end of it, there'll be an exam. So each one has 3 lectures that covers 3 lectures in each module with a different focus. For example, with Facebook, our first thing is the photo management system. We go on to how they construct the news feed, and then we talk a little bit about security. And similarly, each of the other ones gets its own set of 3 topics. Okay, so that's it. The exams will be online through Blackboard. 35 questions, multiple choice. Okay, but they are challenging multiple choice because especially because they're remote. They're always challenging anyway, but they kind of have to be challenging on remote, because if it's just look up a term and a definition, then given that we're all going to be open notes, yeah, there's not much point. Open notes. So, key thing, review the material well ahead of the exam, okay? Because if you try to show up cold and think you're going to be able to look up everything, no, you won't. You won't. Some people take it as a personal challenge. I'm telling you, you don't want to do that, okay? So review it. The ideal, we'll talk more about this as the course goes on. Ideally, you would be able to explain the concepts to someone without prior knowledge. Okay, so you could say, what's a database? How does that work? What's a relational database? Okay, and then if you can explain that, well, that puts you in a good state. So I'll give you an example. Early on, we'll talk about, all right, by the way, I have a dog. We've been photobombed by our dog, so there he is. Yeah, wherever I am, that's where he is. Long story. Hey, buddy, lie down, you're okay. You can hang out with me, hi. All right, so, dog. Hi, you're okay, boy, lie down, here. All right. Anyway, so example, imagine if we're talking about hard drives, right? And you guys may be aware that there are hard drives and there are solid state drives, right? Anybody want to impress me? What's the difference between a regular hard drive and a solid state drive? Who knows? Who knows some stuff? Go ahead, shout it out if you have an opinion. Otherwise, I'll talk. Somebody's doing something there in the chat. 1 second. I gotta drop the blind because if the dog is in here, he's going to freak out if he sees another dog walking by the window. He's not, he doesn't handle dogs well. Okay, so we're going to look at, see what's in the chat. Hard drives are those old floppies. Well, not exactly. Floppy drives have their own thing. So we have the 5 1/4 inch that are super old and the 3 1/2 inch that are only kind of old. There you go. That's the correct answer. We'll take that. Hard drive is mechanical, right? Hard drive is like an old timey record player, basically. And a solid state drive is basically not. It's like a series of, yeah, it's digital. It's like a set of switches, okay? So yeah, that's the difference. Now, the practical consequence of that, there's a few things, right? So a simple exam question might be something like, simple exam question would be something along the lines of, what's a hard drive, right? And the answer might be it's a mechanical blah, 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 whatever, okay? But more likely exam question would be something like, which of the following are two differences between hard drives and solid state drives? I just call it SSD. Okay. And the thing is, right, maybe you could say hard drives are slower, which is true. I'm not 100% sure of the current state of these things. Solid state drives might now be cheaper than hard drives. Not 100. Recently they were not, but they may have turned that corner. So let's say they are, because they surely will be in the near future. Hard drives are slower and more expensive and basically obsolete. Okay, and if you pick some like 2 out of 3, then those would be fine. So the goal that we're trying to do here in this course is not just, we don't want you to just memorize a big list of definitions, right? Because that's not especially useful. There's nobody out there, there's no business out there that's going to hire you, 4 years from now, and your first day on the job, they'll say, hey, we got this big list of definitions for you to memorize. There'll be a quiz tomorrow, and then you get paid $1,000 for the week, right? That's not how life works. What would be useful, of course, understanding what the tech is, how it compares, and being able to make good decisions based on that information. So what might happen, you get hired by some small business, you're their IT person, and they say, hey, we've just heard about this new generation of hard drives called solid state drives, and all of our equipment are hard drives. What's the pros and cons on that? Should we switch it? Should we not switch it? Should we do a phased in plan of doing it? And you might come back with some answer that says, well, hard drives right now, say circa 2014, they're more expensive than the mechanical hard drives, but they're also faster. So maybe we could use them as a specialized part of our system. And then as prices come down over the next few years, we can phase in more and more of them. That's a big part of what Facebook started doing around about 10 years ago. Initially, they were all on hard drives, and then solid state drives came along and they started switching over to those fairly quickly. So that sort of thing is actually useful to a business. Okay, that's what we're trying to get to here. So it's not just terms and definitions. I mean, you need to know what the things are, but you also need to be able to apply that knowledge. Okay, and you'll get enough knowledge in this course to hopefully be able to do that. As always, some students do a better job than others. All right, so I'm going to pause the sharing for a minute. We'll see if people have questions. I'm going to pause the recording. We are back in recording, and I'm going to share, and we'll share the paint, and here's the paint. And now we're going to talk about the lab side. So let's get rid of all this. You've seen it. You don't need to keep seeing it. Hold on. Oh, it's, sorry, out of it here. There we go. Okay, so the lab side, remember, lab is not closely affiliated with the lecture side. the main point of the lab, we teach you Excel, Access, which is database software, and a little bit of web design. For most of you, Excel will be the most important, okay? If you're an IDS major, database software and web design might also be important, okay? But the main thing, this is a class that all the business majors have to take. So everybody needs to learn Excel. If you're a business major, you need to know Excel. So here's where we'll get you started with that. So the structure, we have 4 exercises on Access, 4 exercises on Excel, 1 exercise on integrating them, okay, and 3 exercises on web design. So we'll teach HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript, which are some languages used for coding on web pages. Okay, that's what the lab is going to be. And for each of these, we have a couple of assignments. So for Access here, for Access, we have 2 assignments. Okay, for Excel, again, 2 assignments. And then for web design, I guess I'll do that in blue. We have 1 assignment. So there'll be 5 assignments over the course of the semester. And when there are 2, there'll be first an easy one, a small one, and then a more complicated one, right? So you have an intro Access assignment where you basically just set up a database file, and then a big one where you actually do some stuff with it. Same thing for Excel. So that's what happens there. Also, lab attendance is graded, okay? So if you are familiar with the concept of CYA, which stands for covering your ass, that's what we're doing with the labs, okay? So because there's an expectation that you learn Excel in particular in IDS 200, we have to make sure that everyone attends lab sessions, okay? Because what we don't want you go and you take Finance 300 or something, and you don't know anything about Excel, and the instructor says, hey, I thought you were supposed to learn that in IDS 200. You're like, oh, yeah, no, we didn't learn anything, right? That's exactly what we don't want. And there are departmental battles over who gets funding for TAs, stuff like that. So because we have them, we have to do a good job with it. So we got to teach everybody Excel in particular. So by having everybody's butts in the seats, right, by tracking attendance, we can at least say the students were taught. Maybe they don't remember, but they were taught, right? We did our part of the job. So that's it. That's why lab attendance. So the way that's going to work, every lab session has an associated lab exercise, okay? At the end of the lab exercise, at the end of the lab session, you submit the lab exercise as proof of attendance, okay? That's it. And the TA is going to track attendance and see who's there and all that, but, you know, when you submit the lab exercise, you know, we know you're there. The lab exercises will be graded for completion, not perfection. Okay, so if there's some mistakes in there, don't panic. You're still going to get full credit as long as you actually gave it a good faith effort, right? So if you just like create a blank Excel file and submit that, then no, that's not really going to count. But if you do the stuff and there's a little error in there somewhere or a few errors, whatever, yeah, so be it. Okay, the point is we're teaching you how to do stuff. You learn, and mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. That's okay. All right, so that's it. The breakdown of points here. Lab is 38 lab is 30% of the course grade. Okay. Assignments altogether, if I recall correctly, are 180 points. And the lab exercise, the lab attendance, that can't be right. 60, 60, 60, 180, 180, 48. Yeah, 228. Okay. The assignments are 228 points. And the lab attendance is 72 points. So it's about 3/4 assignments, 1/4 showing up, roughly. Okay? That's what we got. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover for assignments, all right, so there's two key course policies that are worth mentioning. Number one, will there be a curve? Probably. Okay, you can look up in the syllabus for details about that. Yes, there will probably be a curve, although I can't speak to what exactly it will be until all the grades are in. But depending on what's going on in the semester, for example, the cutoff for the A has been as low as like 85 or 86%. There was one semester, I think a couple years back, where we missed a few days due to snow. And so I made it lower because we had to rush through some things. There have been on occasion as high as like 88%. So there'll be probably some kind of curve. Although you never know, everybody might do well and then there'll be no curve. So we'll see. The other thing, late penalties. Okay, so in general, most assignments you can submit late, but there's a penalty, and it'll, typically be like 25% of the assignment grade. So you don't want to turn stuff in late unless you really have to. However, typically, so I'll say typically 25%. However, you can ask 48 hours before the deadline for a 3-day extension, which will be given. Okay, that's the only criterion, is that you ask 48 hours in advance. We don't ask for a good reason. We don't even ask for a reason, because we don't want to put ourselves in the position of having to be the reason police. Okay, it's just, if you need that extension, ask us a couple days in advance and you can get it. Okay, because sometimes life happens. But if you don't ask for it in advance, right, you don't want to be the dude, Friday night, 10 p.m., the assignment's due at midnight, and you are baffled or too under the influence, whatever, to complete your assignment successfully, and you ask it 2 hours before the deadline if you can get the extension. No, you can't. Okay, what we're trying to do is reward planning. So if you see up early in advance that you got an issue, let us know. We get that. So, and that should be given to the TA. Okay, so request from your TA. All right, so I'm gonna have to close this down presently because I have a 2 p.m. lecture I gotta give, but this is it. There's nothing due in the immediate future. First exam is going to happen at the end of week 4, I believe, and we'll have more to say about that closer to the date. Likewise, the first assignment, labs don't start until week 3. The first assignment won't be posted until week 4 and won't be due until week 5 or 6, I forget, probably week 5. So we got a little bit of time before all this happens. All right, but that's the state of things. And so I'm going to shut down this share. I'm going to